one that I get asked a lot. Why don't you use autism service dog Paula that much? Let me have a sip of my beer. Um, we got Paula when Kyle was, what was he, 7? 6? 6 or 7 years old. And at the time, he was, I wouldn't say he was a wanderer. He's never been that fast. Like, he's not a bolter, but he was a meanderer. He didn't really, walk anywhere with any purpose. Um, and I've said on the blog, Paula is not a uh, trained seizure dog, and she's not a bloodhound. Um, we got her from an organization called Guiding Eyes for the Blind, and they have a healing autism program, heal as in HEEL, and they take dogs that sort of, I hate to use the word, but they kind of failed out of blind person school because they didn't have the right temperament to work with the blind, and they repurposed those dogs to work with kids with autism. And so they found Paula for Kyle, and they felt they were a good match. And basically, for the first, I would say the first year and a half to 2 years that we had her, we used her a lot. And basically, any outdoor outing, the two of them were attached and they were tethered together. Kyle would wear a thing around his waist, and then Paula would wear her vest and be tethered together, and he would hold on. And it really taught him to be calmer and walk with more of a purpose and not to wander. I mean, there's a perfect video. This is pre Autism Daddy that I remember putting up on my personal Facebook page of Kyle and Paula at the beach, and they were attached, and Kyle was just sitting there enjoying playing in the sand, where pre Paula, he would just be running all over the place, not being able to sit still and not being able to enjoy himself. So in the beginning, it might seem cruel that we're attaching this kid to this dog and sort of grounding him, but it really taught him that to slow down and sort of take things in, and he does that much better now. So I feel like we don't need Paula as much. And I mean, I've got a tough skin. I always say that it's not a big deal. But Kyle and Paula walking around is probably one of the hardest things to do when you're walking around in a public place with a kid attached to a service dog. I mean, it's natural for people to stare, and it does get to you after a while. So we don't use her as much anymore, mostly because we don't need her as much, and Kyle's getting bigger, and Paula's getting older. But also, we don't use it that much because sometimes it's sort of like, is it worth the aggravation of we're going to the zoo? Do we really want every every kid staring at the kid attached to the dog when Kyle doesn't need her as much? So we still use her when we go on vacations. We still use her when we go to restaurants a lot. But in the day-to-day stuff, we don't use her. And also in school, people always say, why don't you send her to school with him? And the reason is that there has to be somebody that can give commands to the dog. So my wife and I were trained on how to work with Paula and how to give commands. And so when she's with us, we can control her. But when she's in school with Kyle, there would need to be another adult that would need to be trained. And it probably could be done if it was necessary, but we haven't pursued it because it wasn't necessary. So she's a great addition to our family, and we love her, but we don't use her as much as we used to because she's kind of done her job so well that she's trained herself out of a job. Let's see.